Long ago, in a land of tall grass and whispering winds, there was a young woman named Sarah. She was a hairdresser, clever with her hands and full of dreams. In the noisy city where she grew up, her little salon was hidden between big shops and busy streets. Every day she worked hard, but her heart was never at peace. Cars roared outside, neighbors argued, and her spirit felt tired. One evening, Sarah sat alone and said to herself, "I need a quiet place, a place where beauty and peace can live together. Maybe in the village, people will love my work and I will find rest for my soul." So she packed her scissors, her combs, and her mirrors into a small wooden box. She carried her bags, left the city, and traveled until she reached a faraway village. This was no ordinary village, it sat beside a wide, glittering river. Birds sang on the trees, and the air smelled of wet earth and fresh grass. Sarah breathed deeply and smiled. "Yes, here is peace. Here, I will build my dream." As she walked along the riverbank, she saw an empty mud hut. Its roof was broken, and spiders had made webs on the door. But Sarah's eyes lit up. She clapped her hands and laughed. "This is the place. I will fix it. I will paint it. And soon, women will come to sit in my chair. My salon will live again." But the villagers were not happy. Old women, with faces lined like cracked earth, shook their heads. One elder warned, "Child, you must not open a shop here. This river is not friendly. It is cursed. Many before you tried, and they left in sorrow." Sarah only bowed politely, but in her heart she said, "These are just old stories. I do not fear rivers or curses. I believe in hard work." And so, Sarah cleaned the hut. She patched the roof, washed the walls, and set her mirrors to shine in the sun. When she was finished, her salon looked bright and welcoming, standing proudly by the river's edge. That evening, as the sun fell low and the crickets began to sing, Sarah sat by her salon door. The river flowed gently, but its voice was strange. It hummed like a woman's song, soft and sad, drifting across the water. Sarah shivered but shook her head. "It is only the wind," she whispered. Little did she know, the river had heard her footsteps and it was waiting. The next morning, the sun rose golden over the quiet village. Birds flapped their wings above the river, and children ran barefoot through the dusty paths. Sarah woke early, washed her face, and opened the wooden door of her new salon. She set her combs on the table, polished her small mirror, and whispered, "Today, my hands will bless women with beauty." At first, no one came. The villagers passed by, watching from a distance. They whispered among themselves, "This is the woman who has built her salon by the cursed river. Should we trust her?" Others said, "But look at her face, she looks kind. Let us see what her hands can do." By mid-morning, the first customer arrived. It was a young bride-to-be named Amina. She sat shyly on the chair and said, "Please, Sarah, make me beautiful. Tomorrow I will walk to my husband's home." Sarah's heart leaped with joy. With gentle fingers, she oiled Amina's hair and braided it into neat rows that curved like rivers across her scalp. When Sarah finished, Amina looked into the mirror and gasped, "Oh, I look like a queen." She ran outside, and the other women gathered around her, amazed at her shining hair. That one braid opened the door. Before long, women lined up outside Sarah's salon. Some wanted their hair washed, others wanted it braided, and some only wanted to sit and talk while Sarah's hands worked magic on their heads. The little salon became alive. Laughter filled the hut, stories danced from mouth to mouth, and coins dropped into Sarah's basket. For the first time in many years, she felt her dream coming true. But as the day grew late and the last woman left, Sarah was alone again. She swept the floor and closed her box of combs. Outside, the river whispered. She thought she heard a voice calling her name. "Sarah! Sarah!" She froze. The air grew cold, and her heart began to beat fast. She stepped outside and listened. The river moved slowly, its surface shining under the moonlight. Then, faint but clear, she heard a soft song. It was a woman's voice, sweet, sad, and endless like the water itself. Sarah hugged herself and hurried back inside. She told herself, "It is only my imagination. The river cannot speak." Yet, as she blew out her lamp, the melody still floated through the night, and the hair on her neck rose with fear. The salon was alive, yes. But so was the river. The days passed, and Sarah's salon by the river grew famous in the small village. Every morning, women came carrying baskets of food and little coins. They sat in her chair, and Sarah's hands worked wonders. Their hair glowed in the sun, their braids shone like woven ropes, and their hearts were filled with joy. But even as her business grew, Sarah's nights were not peaceful. The strange song of the river returned again and again. Sometimes it was soft, like a mother singing to a child. Other times it was strong, like a drumbeat calling her name. Sarah tried to close her ears, but she could not. The melody always reached her, sliding through the cracks of her salon walls. One night, after a long day of work, Sarah was about to close her wooden door when she heard a knock. Talk, talk, talk. She frowned. It was late. No villager ever came at such an hour. Slowly, she opened the door. A tall woman stood outside. Her skin shone pale in the moonlight, almost glowing. Her hair was long, black, and dripping wet as though she had just risen from the river. Her eyes were deep, dark pools that seemed to hold secrets older than the village itself. "Good evening, Sarah," the woman said in a voice soft and sweet. "I have been watching you." Sarah's knees grew weak. Who is this woman? She thought. And how does she know my name? The visitor smiled and lifted a basket. Inside were shining wigs, brighter than gold, and bottles filled with sweet-smelling oils. She said, "Take these, Sarah. With them, your salon will become the most famous in the land. Every woman will desire your touch. Every stranger will travel here to meet you. But remember this, do not ask me where these gifts come from." Sarah hesitated. The old warning of the villagers echoed in her mind, "The river is cursed. Stay away." But then she looked at the basket again. The wigs shimmered like sunlight on water. The oils smelled like flowers from another world. Her heart beat fast. Fame, success, riches. They were all within her grasp. With trembling hands, Sarah accepted the basket. "Thank you, kind lady," she whispered. The woman's lips curved into a strange smile, showing teeth sharp as fish bones. She nodded once, then turned and walked away, straight toward the river. Sarah stood frozen at her door, staring as the figure melted into the night mist. That night, she could not sleep. The basket of wigs and oils sat in the corner of her salon, glowing softly in the dark, waiting. The morning sun rose over the river, turning the water into silver light. Sarah opened her salon door, but her eyes kept falling on the strange basket in the corner. The wigs glowed softly, and the bottles of oil gave off a sweet fragrance that filled the whole room. She whispered to herself, "Should I use them?" The woman said my salon will become famous. But why did she warn me not to ask where they came from? As she stood thinking, her first customer of the day entered. It was Mama Halima, an older woman known for her pride. She placed a coin on the table and said, "Sarah, give me something new. I want to look younger. My daughter's wedding is coming, and I must shine brighter than the other mothers." Sarah hesitated. Then her eyes fell on the shining wigs. Slowly, she picked one up. It was smooth, soft, and heavy, like strands of living water. She placed it carefully on Mama Halima's head and rubbed her hair with a drop of the sweet oil. The mirror revealed a miracle. Mama Halima gasped. Her wrinkled face seemed to glow. Her hair shone black as night, long and thick like a young maiden's. She clapped her hands and shouted, "Look at me, I am reborn." She rushed outside, calling the other women to come and see. They gathered around, wide-eyed, whispering in amazement. By midday, the line at Sarah's salon stretched far beyond her door. Everyone wanted the wigs. Everyone wanted the oils. And Sarah's hands worked quickly, her combs flying, her heart racing. The wigs seemed to change every woman, making them look richer, stronger, and more beautiful than ever before. By evening, Sarah's basket was almost empty, but her pockets were heavy with coins. She stared at her hands, trembling. "What power is this?" she whispered. But as she cleaned the salon, she noticed something strange. When she touched the wigs, they were damp, wet, as if they had just been pulled from water. Drops slid down her fingers and fell on the floor. She wiped them quickly and told herself, maybe it is only the oil. That night, as Sarah lay in bed, the river sang again. But this time, the song was different. It was no longer soft, it was louder, stronger, and it carried laughter inside it. The hair on her arms stood up. She pulled her blanket close, but the sound followed her into her dreams. The salon was alive with beauty. But the river was alive too, watching, waiting. In only a few weeks, Sarah's salon by the river became the most talked about place in the whole village. Women no longer cared about the warnings of the elders. They said, cursed or not, this salon makes us queens. Every morning, women lined up before Sarah even opened her door. Some came from nearby villages, others walked for hours just to sit in her chair. The wigs made them glow, the oils gave them power, and the people began to whisper that Sarah's hands were touched by the gods. Money poured into her basket. Sarah bought new mirrors, new chairs, and new clothes. She smiled in the daytime, but at night her smile disappeared. Because strange things were happening. Some women who wore the wigs became proud and boastful. They looked down on their friends, refusing to share food or greet others in the market. Others grew weak after weeks of wearing the oils, hair falling out, skin turning pale. Yet still, they returned, begging Sarah for more. One woman cried at her door, "Please, Sarah, give me another wig. Without it, I am nothing." Sarah's heart trembled. She wanted to refuse, but her hands reached for the basket. She told herself, "It is not my fault. They asked for it." But deep inside, she knew something was wrong. At night, the river no longer sang softly. It laughed. It called her name over and over, its voice echoing through her salon walls. Sarah. Sarah. Sometimes she dreamed of faces in the water, women with long wet hair and eyes that burned like fire. They stretched their hands toward her, whispering, "Return what is ours." One evening, when Sarah was closing, she noticed the wigs again. Their shine was strange, almost too bright, like moonlight trapped in strands. When she touched them, water dripped between her fingers. The smell of the oils had also changed. They no longer smelled like flowers, they smelled like the river itself, damp and heavy. Fear grew inside her heart, but so did her hunger for success. She asked herself, should I stop now? Or should I continue? But when she thought of the women lined at her door, the coins filling her basket, and the praises sung in her name, she knew the answer her heart had already chosen. Sarah was rising in fame, but deep within the river, shadows were also rising. One evening, when the moon was round and bright, Sarah sat in her salon, staring at the last wig in the basket. She held it in her hands, and cold drops of water ran down her arms. Her heart was heavy. "Where do these wigs truly come from?" she whispered. The memory of the tall woman's warning returned to her, "Do not ask me where they come from." But questions burned inside her like fire. That night, when the crickets sang and the villagers had gone to sleep, Sarah heard the river again. The voice was no longer a song. It was a call. Clear. Strong. It spoke her name again and again. Sarah. Sarah. Her hands shook, but her feet carried her outside. She followed the sound down to the water's edge. The moonlight lay on the river like silver skin. The water looked calm, but when she looked deeper, shadows moved beneath. Then she saw them. Faces of women floated under the surface. Their hair was long and flowing, darker than night, moving like snakes in the water. Their eyes glowed like lanterns, sad and angry. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The voices rose together, like a choir of the drowned. "Those wigs are ours. Our hair was taken. Our beauty stolen. Return them, Sarah, or join us in the river." Sarah stepped back, trembling. She shook her head. "No, it cannot be. These are only dreams." But the river answered with a wave that slapped against the shore, wetting her feet. The water was cold, colder than death. Sarah ran back to her salon, her heart pounding like a drum. She locked the door and hid under her blanket, but she could still hear the voices whispering through the walls. "Return them, return them." The next day, she tried to forget. She served the women who crowded her salon, combing, braiding, placing wigs on their heads. They laughed, they sang, they paid her with silver coins. To them, Nothing was wrong. But Sarah's eyes kept watching the wigs, waiting to see if they would drip again, waiting to see if the faces of the river women would rise from the strands. And in her heart, she knew the truth. The wigs were not gifts of beauty. They were stolen from the spirits of the river. The question now was how long before the spirits came to take them back. Sarah's salon was busier than ever. Women from far villages filled the chairs, carrying coins, gifts, and praises. To the world, she was blessed. To Sarah herself, she was trapped. Each time she placed a wig on a woman's head, she remembered the glowing eyes in the river. Each time she opened a bottle of oil, she smelled the damp scent of water. But the women did not care. They shouted, "Give us more wigs. Give us more oils." One afternoon, Sarah tried to refuse. She told a group of women, "My sisters, I cannot use these wigs anymore. They are not safe." But the women grew angry. One pointed a finger and said, "You are jealous of us. You want to keep the beauty for yourself." Another shouted, "If you stop, we will curse you. We will tell everyone you are a liar." The voices rose until Sarah's salon shook with their cries. Afraid of losing everything, Sarah's hands betrayed her. She reached for the basket, pulled out a wig, and placed it on a woman's head. The women cheered, but Sarah's heart sank. She felt the river watching her. That night, the voices returned, louder than ever. The water spirits sang outside her salon. "Sarah, Sarah, return what is ours." Her sleep was broken by nightmares. In one dream, she was combing a woman's hair when the strands turned into black snakes. In another, she placed a wig on someone's head, but instead of a mirror, she saw the river staring back at her. The next morning, her face was pale, her hands trembling. But still, the women banged on her door, demanding more. Sarah stood between two worlds, the greed of humans and the anger of spirits. She whispered to herself, "If I stop, the women will hate me. If I continue, the river will take me. Where do I run? Where do I hide?" The breaking point had come. Sarah was no longer free. She was chained by her own choice, and the chain was tightening. The village saw only her success. They did not see the shadows that followed her home at night. They did not hear the voices whispering through the river breeze. But Sarah knew. The river was no longer waiting. It was preparing. And soon, the river would claim what belonged to it. The moon was high, and the night was silent, when Sarah heard the knock on her salon door again. Talk, talk, talk. Her body froze. She knew who it was. Slowly, she opened the door, and there stood the same tall woman with pale skin and wet hair that dripped onto the floor. The woman's dark eyes glowed as she smiled. "Sarah," she said softly, "your fame has grown. Your salon is the pride of the village. But do you remember the promise you made? You were not to ask where these gifts came from. Now, it is time to pay the price." Sarah fell to her knees. "Please, leave me in peace. I only wanted to help women. I only wanted a better life." The spirit shook her head. "You did not help them. You fed their pride. You chained them with false beauty. And you chained yourself with greed. Now, you must choose." Sarah's lips trembled. "Choose? Choose what?" The spirit's voice was calm, but her words cut like knives. "If you continue, the river will claim you. If you stop, the women will turn against you. Either way, you will suffer." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. She bowed her head, whispering, "What do you want from me?" The spirit leaned closer. Her breath was cold like river mist. "Return the hair. Return what belongs to the water. Or prepare to drown with us." Then, just as suddenly as she came, the spirit vanished into the night. Only the sound of dripping water remained on the salon floor. Sarah locked her door and sat in the darkness, shaking. She remembered the faces in the river, their glowing eyes, their voices crying for justice. She also remembered the women outside her salon, desperate for wigs, begging for oils. Her mind was torn in two. She felt like a bird trapped in a cage, wings beating against the bars. That night, Sarah dreamed again. She was standing by the river when many pale hands reached out of the water, pulling at her dress, dragging her under. Her combs turned into sharp claws. Her mirror cracked, showing her face sinking into the dark water. She woke screaming, her bed soaked with sweat. And outside, the river sang louder than ever. The spirit's demand had been made clear. The time for running was over. The full moon rose like a giant eye above the village. Its light poured onto the river, making the water shine like silver fire. Sarah sat alone in her salon, her basket empty, her heart heavy. She had stopped using the wigs, but the women had not stopped coming. That evening, they gathered outside her door. Their voices were loud and angry. "Sarah, give us more wigs," one shouted. "You cannot keep beauty for yourself," another cried. "If you refuse, we will destroy your salon," they threatened. Sarah stood inside, trembling. She wanted to scream the truth: these wigs are cursed. They belong to the river spirits. But fear tied her tongue. Suddenly, the ground shook. The river roared louder than thunder. A strong wind blew through the village, rattling doors and windows. The women outside fell silent, their eyes wide with fear. Then the pale woman appeared at the salon door. Her hair dripped with water, her eyes shining like cold stars. She pointed at Sarah and said, "Time is finished. The river calls." Before Sarah could answer, the salon floor grew wet. Dark water rushed in, spreading fast. The mirrors cracked. The chairs floated. The women screamed and ran, but the water only grew higher. Sarah's heart pounded. She tried to run to the door, but the spirit blocked her path. The woman's smile was sharp, her teeth white like fish bones. "You took what was not yours. Now the river will take you." The wigs in the basket dissolved into black water, and from that water rose faces, the faces Sarah had seen in her dreams. Women with long wet hair, their eyes glowing, their voices echoing, "Return what is ours. Return what is ours." Cold hands grabbed Sarah's legs. She fought, kicking and crying, "Please, forgive me." But the water pulled her down. The spirit only watched, her smile never fading. The villagers outside shouted and knocked on the walls, but the salon shook like it was made of paper. The river itself had come to claim its debt. In one final scream, Sarah was dragged into the dark flood. The salon door slammed shut, and silence fell. When the water withdrew, the salon was empty. No Sarah. No wigs. Only the sound of the river flowing, calm and endless, as if nothing had happened. But the villagers knew. They whispered to one another, "The river has taken her. Beauty has a price." The morning after the great flood, the villagers gathered at the riverbank. The sun shone bright, but the air was heavy, as if the land itself carried sorrow. Children whispered, women covered their heads, and men stood in silence. Sarah's salon was gone, washed away like dust. Not even a chair, a mirror, or a basket was found. Only the ground remained wet, and the river water still smelled of strange perfume, the same perfume that once made the wigs so tempting. The villagers feared to speak Sarah's name aloud. Some said she had been taken under the river to live forever as a servant of the water spirits. Others said her soul had been woven into the wigs, floating somewhere deep in the dark current. One old man, the village elder, raised his staff and spoke. "Listen well. This is not just Sarah's story. This is a warning. The river gives, but the river also takes. When you touch what belongs to the spirits, you must pay the price." The crowd murmured. Mothers pulled their daughters close. Young women, who once fought to wear Sarah's wigs, now touched their natural hair with pride and fear. Beauty, they realized, was not worth losing one's soul. That night, the villagers made a fire near the river. They sang old songs, songs that called for peace with the spirits. They poured calabashes of milk and honey into the water, asking for forgiveness, asking the river to leave them in peace. The flames crackled, the drums beat, and the river answered with silence. From that day forward, no woman in the village dared to collect anything from the river without prayer. When they fetched water, they whispered blessings. When they bathed, they asked permission. And when they saw wigs or strange objects floating, they turned away and left them untouched. But the story did not end there. Travelers from far places later came to the village and heard the tale. They carried it to other lands, telling people of the woman who tried to steal beauty from the spirits. Everywhere the story spread, it carried the same lesson. greed and vanity can open doors that are better left closed. Years passed, but children still gathered around their grandparents at night to hear the tale of Sarah and the cursed Wigs. They listened wide-eyed, clutching each other when the part came about the pale woman who rose from the river with hair dripping and eyes like stars. Some children cried, some shivered, but all remembered. The elders always ended the story with the same words. True beauty is not bought with stolen things. It is not found in wigs, perfumes, or mirrors. True beauty comes from the heart, from kindness, from peace with people and spirits. Do not forget this, or the river will remind you. And so, Sarah's name became a shadow in the village. Her salon was never rebuilt. Her house was left empty, swallowed by weeds and silence. But her story lived on, stronger than stone, carried in every whisper of the river. The people learned to respect the water, to honor what they could not see, and to teach their children that greed brings only sorrow. And the river kept flowing, silent and watchful, guarding its secrets, waiting for the next one who would dare to take what was not theirs.